There comes a moment in every man's life when he is no longer confused, he is exposed. No longer lost, just undisciplined. No longer unlucky, just unwilling to govern his own mind. And that moment, when it arrives, is either the beginning of his ascent or the confirmation of his descent. Because here is the truth few have the courage to admit. Your life is not a result of what happened to you. It is a result of how you've programmed your mind to interpret, respond to, and repeat what happened to you. What you call fate, what you call circumstance, what you call difficulty, is simply the echo of a mental pattern you've refused to confront. You are where you are because your mind has been wired that way by environment, by repetition, by emotional reaction, by unconscious self-talk, and by every excuse you've rehearsed into habit. And unless you reprogram it deliberately, decisively, and daily, your future will be nothing but a recycled version of your past. This is not a warning. This is a law. If you do not take control of your inner world, your outer world will be hijacked by forces you don't even see. Now, let us not pretend otherwise. Your mind is already programmed by school systems that taught you to obey before you learned to think, by media that trained your nervous system to associate fear with progress, by peers who celebrated comfort and mocked clarity, by emotion-driven decisions that were never audited, only repeated. And unless you wipe that slate clean, unless you rebuild the very structure of your thoughts, you will become a man who lives out his entire life one step short of greatness. So I speak to the part of you that is tired of reacting, the part that no longer wants to be ruled by emotion, fear, approval, or chaos, the part that knows deep within, I was made for more, but my mind is not yet trained to receive it. That part is your inner genius, and it is waiting for you to stop memorizing your limitations, waiting for you to stop treating self-mastery as optional, waiting for you to stop blaming the world for a life you've programmed through distraction, repetition, and unconscious mental drift. Your mind is a tool, not a master. But if you do not tell it what to believe, someone else will. And if you do not train it to obey you, it will obey your emotions. And emotion, left undisciplined, is the architect of every failure. Let us define the core problem with ruthless honesty. You react too easily. You indulge it too often. You compromise too quickly. You delay too frequently. You need to feel good before you move, and that weakness has cost you everything. If you allow emotions to govern your actions, you forfeit your power. But if you command your thoughts, you command your future. This is the cause of your frustration, not the world, not other people, not circumstance, but the failure to interrupt your own programming. So now, let us introduce the solution. You must reprogram your mind before it's too late, before your emotional patterns become permanent, before your tolerance for mediocrity becomes your identity, before your inner chaos becomes your external destiny. Reprogramming your mind begins with detachment. You cannot change what you're still emotionally attached to. You cannot rewire thought patterns you continue to protect. You must step outside of your mental habits and see them clearly like a builder stepping outside a collapsing house to redesign it from the foundation up. That means you stop saying, "I've always been like this. That's just who I am. I'm trying, but no more." These are not truths. These are commands that reinforce a failing operating system. The first act of a man reclaiming his mind is to separate reaction from response. Reaction is automatic. It is emotion pretending to be action. Response is conscious. It is principle moving through precision. The man who reacts remains trapped. The man who responds escapes. Every day you react emotionally, you give power to the old programming. But every day you respond from principle, you lay a new foundation. This is how reprogramming begins, not in the mind, but in your choices. You act with discipline even when emotion protests. You speak with precision, even when chaos tempts confusion. You move with intention, even when fear threatens to paralyze. And you repeat that action not once, not twice, but daily, until your subconscious no longer fights it. This is the principle of autosuggestion, repeating a thought, a belief, a command so consistently that your nervous system rewires itself to act on it without resistance. Do not underestimate this principle. Autosuggestion is not fluff. It is psychological warfare. Because right now, you are under attack from within. You are under attack by every belief you adopted without scrutiny, every phrase you repeated in weakness, every identity you accepted from failure. And your only weapon, your only armor, is the repeated declaration of a new standard. You must speak power, think power, write power, repeat power, not to impress others, but to overwrite the virus of hesitation and mediocrity. This is how the mind is reprogrammed, through consistent, emotionally detached, principle-driven repetition of truth. And that truth must be clear. You must define who you are becoming, not vaguely, but with surgical precision, because the subconscious does not respond to hope. It responds to specificity. I am disciplined. I act from clarity, not emotion. I do the hard thing, even when it hurts. I protect my energy, my focus, my time, and my mind like sacred ground. Say it daily. Write it repeatedly. Think it until it becomes automatic, not because it feels real, but because repetition makes it real. The man who commands his thoughts daily cannot be stopped long term, because even when he fails, he refocuses. Even when he loses, he learns. Even when he falls, he never falls back into the identity that once enslaved him. He becomes new, and his life bends to that new self. You must reprogram your mind before it's too late, because every day you delay, your current habits sink deeper into your nervous system, carving grooves of weakness into your identity. If you allow the same excuses to loop in your mind unchecked, they become architecture. And architecture becomes environment. And you will live inside that environment calling it reality, when in truth it is only a mental prison you built by neglect. Let me remind you, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your mental discipline. And mental discipline is not a product of intelligence. It is a product of intention repeated until it becomes instinct. Every thought you entertain is a command. Every sentence you utter is an instruction to your subconscious. Every time you say, I can't focus, you are deepening that identity. Every time you say, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not good at this, you are reinforcing the exact mental architecture that has kept you broke, distracted, and emotionally reactive. If you do not intervene, your mind becomes your jailer. But if you take control, your mind becomes your most loyal servant. And here is how you do it. The first principle, thought before feeling. Never again allow how you feel to determine what you do. Feelings are feedback, but they are not fact. They are echoes of your history, not instructions for your future. If you allow your feelings to run your life, you will never live a day rooted in clarity. You will only bounce between emotion and exhaustion, driven by invisible impulses that weaken you. Train yourself to pause, to observe, to ask, is this thought aligned with who I am becoming? If yes, act. If no, replace it with one that is. This is accurate thinking, one of the rarest forms of power in existence. It is not optimism. It is not pessimism. It is precision. It is the refusal to allow imagination, fear, or social pressure to dictate what you believe about yourself or the world. Every great leader, thinker, or builder of wealth operates from this foundation. And it begins with a decision. I will no longer think automatically. I will think accurately. The second principle, emotion is not authority. Your feelings are not your ruler. And every time you obey them without question, you weaken your ability to lead yourself. This is why most people can't stay consistent, because they only act when it feels good. But success does not care how you feel. It only responds to what you do. And what you do repeatedly becomes who you are. So begin now, detach from the emotional drama of the moment, and ask a better question. What is the correct action according to my higher standard? That is how the mind is reprogrammed, not by escaping emotion, but by refusing to let it lead. Let principle lead. Let the mission lead. Let the future version of you lead. And let emotion follow or be ignored entirely. The third principle, detachment creates power. Most people are mentally weak because they are emotionally addicted. Addicted to comfort. Addicted to reaction. Addicted to stimulation, validation, comparison, and noise. They check their phone before they check their thoughts. They check for approval before they check for truth. And because of that, they never become dangerous. But the man who detaches becomes untouchable because he does not beg for motivation, he generates momentum. He does not argue with distractions, he deletes them. He does not attach to outcomes, he attaches to excellence. And in doing so, he becomes a force. Not emotionally cold, but emotionally governed. Not numb, but neutral. Not passive, but controlled. This is how the mind becomes a weapon, not just a sponge. You must decide. From this day forward, I detach from the emotion that interrupts clarity. That doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you do not let what you feel decide who you are. The fourth principle, personal initiative is the cure for mental decay. You must move. Not someday. Not later. No. You must act before you feel ready. You must decide before others understand. You must speak the truth before anyone claps. Because the habit of starting without permission is the cure for the disease of passivity. Most people wait for signs. But signs follow movement, not the other way around. If you want proof of this, study every man who ever built something that mattered. They did not wait until the market was perfect. They did not wait until they were praised. They acted while others thought. And because of that, they now lead the minds that once doubted them. This is how you claim your seat at the table. You initiate. You take the first step. And you do it daily until action becomes as normal as breathing. Because the man who acts without hesitation rewires his nervous system for certainty. And certainty is not a gift. It is a skill earned by doing what most men delay. The fifth principle. Your environment must be designed, not tolerated. You cannot reprogram your mind while you swim in environments that reinforce your old programming. You must audit, not just your thoughts, but your inputs, your space, your circle, your calendar, your rituals. Ask yourself, what am I tolerating that contradicts the man I am building? That could be a phone screen that owns your attention. That could be a relationship that glorifies chaos. That could be a workspace that reflects clutter and mental confusion. That could be the music, media, or conversations you consume daily without question. Every one of these is a line of code in your subconscious. And unless you take control of that code, your mind will be programmed by noise. You must become a guardian, a gatekeeper. You must filter your inputs with military precision, because garbage in means garbage out. And no man has ever built greatness from polluted thinking. Reprogramming your mind means designing your environment to reflect your highest identity. This is not a suggestion. This is survival, the final principle in this segment. You must repeat until reality bends. No matter how powerful your thought, no matter how true your standard, no matter how worthy your mission, none of it matters if it's not repeated. Repetition is how your mind is trained. You cannot think something once and expect it to become automatic. You must install it through force, through fire, through the quiet, repetitive, daily act of declaring the new self until the old self no longer exists. Say it, write it, act on it. Again, and again, and again. Because when you do this, you are not just thinking, you are reprogramming. You are not just affirming, you are transforming. You are not just planning, you are becoming. And that is the entire mission, to become the man your mind was once too weak to imagine. Do not underestimate the force of repetition. The man who repeats weakness programs his failure. The man who repeats strength carves destiny into his subconscious. You are not struggling because you are incapable. You are struggling because you have rehearsed self-doubt more than self-command. The only way to escape the gravity of the old self is through new repetition, done daily, done seriously, done until you no longer recognize the man you used to be. It is not intensity that reprograms you. It is consistency. Intensity is a spark, but consistency builds the fire that never dies. And you must become the man whose fire is no longer dependent on the weather of emotion. You must generate it, stoke it, feed it, guard it until it becomes self-sustaining. This is why the undisciplined man fails, even when he is talented, because he treats his own mind like a hobby, not a throne. And the throne cannot be claimed by accident. It is seized by force, by clarity, and by discipline that ignores the noise of convenience. Understand this: your mind is not a friend until you conquer it. It will betray you in silence. It will seduce you with comfort. It will convince you that you can delay the right thing, entertain the wrong thing, and still become something great. It will lie to you until you believe that struggle means failure, that confusion means stop, that slow progress means no progress. But here is the truth: the mind only submits to what you prove is non-negotiable. And if discipline is not your daily language, then distraction becomes your native tongue. If you do not lead your mind, someone else will. A screen, a voice, a trend, a weakness. You must look into the mirror every morning and declare war not on the world, but on passivity. You must reclaim your throne and say, "From this moment on, my mind obeys me. Not my fear, not my habits, not my fatigue, not my excuses, me." And then prove it by how you move. This is not philosophy. This is strategy. And the man who lives by strategy becomes the commander of his life. There is a secret among the few who rise to power in any domain. They do not flinch, not at praise, not at criticism, not at chaos, not at silence. They walk into the room calm, not because they feel calm, but because they have trained themselves to detach from emotional volatility. This is mental neutrality, and it is more valuable than any strategy, investment, or education you'll ever acquire. Because when others panic, you remain precise. When others chase noise, you pursue signal. When others become desperate, you remain dangerous because your clarity has become immune to pressure. This neutrality is not apathy. It is command. It is the ability to respond without reacting, to move without trembling, to decide without emotional interference. Train yourself for it. Start today. Delay your reactions. Observe your triggers. Interrupt the loop. Ask, is this a response or a reaction? And then choose clarity every time. That single habit will double your power in every room you enter, because neutrality is rare and power always flows to the rare. Every effect has a cause. And every behavior, every result, every outcome in your life was first born in thought. If your finances are unstable, your thoughts about value, wealth, and worth are scattered. If your relationships are chaotic, your thoughts about boundaries, respect, and truth are unclear. If your health is neglected, your thoughts about discipline, pain, and long-term gain are immature. The world is not punishing you. It is mirroring you. And until you master the first cause, your thoughts, you will remain a slave to the visible while your life is quietly authored by the invisible. So you must think, not casually, not occasionally, not emotionally. You must think like a sculptor, shaping identity, chiseling vision, carving clarity into the block of raw mental chaos. This requires silence, solitude, stillness. It requires you to unplug from noise, sit with yourself, and ask the rarest questions. What is true? What is effective? What is aligned with the man I choose to become? And then think until the answer appears. Most people don't think. They remember. They react. They recycle. But the man who thinks becomes original. And originality is power. There comes a moment where you must declare not to the world, but to yourself. This version of me is no longer allowed. No more snoozing alarms. No more weak apologies. No more emotional decision-making. No more tolerating mediocrity disguised as normal. Draw the line, and do not negotiate with it. Make your standards a wall, not a suggestion. Your standard must become stronger than your circumstance, louder than your emotion, and firmer than your excuses. Why? Because you are not building a routine. You are building identity. And identity is not built in breakthroughs. It is built in refusal. Refusal to retreat. Refusal to slack. Refusal to regress. Refusal to break. Every time you enforce your standard, you feed your identity. And the more you feed it, the stronger it becomes, until one day the old you is no longer even an option. That is when reprogramming becomes permanent. Not when you think differently, but when you can no longer act like the man you used to be. That is the goal. And it is closer than you think if you obey these principles, not as ideas, but as law. You must now understand a truth that evades the masses. Life is not asking you to try harder. Life is demanding that you become unrecognizable to the version of yourself that settles. And this cannot happen with willpower alone. It happens through reconstruction, not of your habits, but of the hidden architecture beneath them, your mental image, your assumptions, your internal laws. You see, every man lives by a set of invisible laws, some written by pain, others inherited by family, many absorbed by accident, few ever chosen deliberately. And the tragedy is this: most men live by laws they never wrote yet, suffer under their rule every single day. They say, I'm just not disciplined. They say, I've always had a temper. They say, I'm not the kind of person who sticks to things. And they say it as if it were fact, as if those sentences were carved in stone, as if their future must always serve the tyrant of their past. But what they are really saying is, I have accepted emotional slavery. Ugly. I have surrendered authorship of my life. I have forgotten that I can reprogram my mind. Let me speak directly to you now. You do not need a better strategy. You need a new internal law. You need to replace every limiting thought with a decree so powerful that your subconscious has no choice but to bow in submission. Because your mind is not neutral, it is obedient, and it will obey the voice that speaks with the most certainty. If that voice is fear, then fear becomes your dictator. If that voice is your past, then your past becomes your ceiling. But if that voice is you, your highest, clearest, most intentional self, then life begins to reorganize itself around your command. This is not magic. This is cause and effect. Thought, backed by belief and repeated with conviction, becomes law in the subconscious. And what is law in the subconscious becomes fact in reality. This is the operating system of every great mind that ever lived. They reprogrammed the software of their identity, not to escape who they were, but to become who they had the power to be. So now I ask you, what laws must you rewrite? What internal code must be broken? What silent vows have you made with mediocrity that now must be revoked? Because make no mistake, you have made them. You've made 1,000 agreements with weakness through your inaction. Every time you said, I'll do it later. Every time you said, it's just how I am. Every time you said, I'll wait until I feel ready. You were reinforcing a silent pact with the version of yourself that fears freedom. And that contract must be burned. In its place, you must install new declarations, not weak affirmations whispered once a month, but iron laws spoken with fire, repeated with intent, enforced with action. Let me give you a few examples. I do not negotiate with distraction. I eliminate it. My mood does not determine my movement. My mission does. I am the master of my state. No one dictates it but me. Discipline is not something I try. It is who I am. Speak them, repeat them, live them, until your behavior begins to reflect them automatically. Because that is the goal of reprogramming. To live on autopilot, but on the right autopilot. Not the autopilot of emotion, not the autopilot of fear, but the autopilot of intention, discipline, and absolute clarity. And that, my friend, is how you build momentum so powerful that the world no longer recognizes you. Understand this above all. Hesitation is not a delay, it is a disease. It begins as doubt. It spreads as indecision. It matures into inaction, and it ends in regret. You do not conquer hesitation by thinking your way through it. You conquer hesitation by overriding it, by building a mind that obeys command without emotional permission. This is the sacred power of mental obedience, the habit of acting on purpose, not on feeling. Most people wait to feel motivated. That is why most people stay the same. Winners move before motivation arrives, because they have trained their subconscious to move on command. If you say you want success, but continue to hesitate in moments of decision, what you really want is comfort. And comfort is the opposite of growth. Every time you hesitate, you're communicating to your subconscious, I am not serious. And your subconscious listens. It records, it remembers, it responds. So when you say you want to wake up early, but you hit snooze, your mind learns that your word is weak. When you say you want discipline, but you scroll mindlessly, your mind learns that distraction wins. But when you say, now, and move without delay, your subconscious learns to trust your voice. And trust is the foundation of identity, because a man cannot build confidence without internal credibility. And you cannot have internal credibility until your words match your action consistently, especially when it's hard. So you must begin small but absolute. No more, maybe tomorrow. No more, I'll try. Replace those phrases with this law. If I speak it, I move. No delay, no loophole, no emotion necessary. That single shift, replacing permission with precision, will triple your power, because the man who moves without emotion becomes unstoppable. He is no longer managed by moods. He is no longer delayed by doubt. He has entered the rare territory of pure execution. This is where results live, not in motivation, but in movement without debate. This is how empires are built, not from a feeling, but from a rhythm that never breaks. Let the masses chase feelings. You chase rhythm. And soon the world will ask you, how did you do it? And you will say, I simply stopped hesitating and started obeying the man I decided to become. Now, let us turn to the principle that few dare to confront, emotional detachment. You must detach not because you are cold, but because you are clear. Attachment is the source of almost every failure. Attachment to approval, attachment to results, attachment to comfort, reputation, validation, ease. But a man who is attached cannot lead. He is ruled by reaction. He is thrown off course by every gust of opinion, every turn of fortune, every whisper of criticism. But the detached man, he is dangerous, because he does not cling to what the world gives. He does not tremble when the world takes. He is anchored in principle, not in outcome. And that man cannot be manipulated. He cannot be bribed. He cannot be discouraged because his mission is internal and therefore invincible. If you want to reprogram your mind, you must first delete your emotional dependence on outcome. Because when you are no longer owned by what happens, you begin to shape what happens. You must train yourself to do what is right without needing applause, to stay on path without needing signs, to endure the storm without needing reassurance. This is the discipline of the rare. And this is where real confidence is born, not from what others think of you, but from what you know you'll still do when no one is watching. Detachment is not giving up, it is growing up. It is the decision to stop letting feelings choose your future. And once you have detached from emotion, you will see the world clearly for the first time. You will see that everything that seemed urgent, loud, chaotic was merely noise. And beneath that noise is clarity. Not because life got easier, but because you became stronger. Your environment is not external, it is internal first. The real battlefield is not your circumstances. It is not the market. It is not the opinions of others. The real battlefield is the mental environment in which your thoughts either rise like kings or sink like slaves. If your inner world is scattered, confused, reactive, your outer world will reflect that chaos in your results, your relationships, and your sense of direction. But if your inner world is disciplined, focused, and governed by principles, then your external world must bow to the order you have created within. You do not rise by force. You rise by frequency, the frequency of your thinking, the vibration of your discipline, the consistency of your internal tone. This is what I call the law of mental neutrality. It means you must remove the noise, the narrative, the emotional fog, and observe your mind without panic, without judgment, without indulgence. It means you think first, feel later. You pause before reacting. You see events not as personal assaults, but as neutral data, waiting to be interpreted by the king, not the servant. Every time you allow yourself to be swept away by emotion, you become a pawn on the board of life. But when you step into neutrality, when you observe without reacting, you reclaim the throne of your mind. Now you command perspective. Now you decide meaning. Now you act based on purpose, not panic. This is not detachment for detachment's sake. This is strategic serenity. And strategic serenity is how leaders rise in chaos while the crowd drowns in drama. Let me make this perfectly clear. Emotion is not the enemy. Identification is. The moment you believe your feelings are facts, your clarity dies. But when you can look at your feelings like clouds in the sky, passing, temporary, unqualified to decide your next move, then you are free. Free to choose the calm path in a crisis. Free to choose the bold action in fear. Free to choose the wise response when provoked. And freedom of choice is the beginning of mastery. So now you must ask, do I own my mind or merely occupy it? Do I rule over my state or am I ruled by what I think I feel? If the answer is not absolute, then you have more work to do. Because neutrality is not passivity. It is power without desperation. It is clarity without craving. It is movement without noise. And only from that calm, command-filled state can you build a life that moves when you move and rises when you rise. Now hear me when I say, nothing you've just learned matters unless you apply it daily. That is the final gatekeeper. Ritual, not theory, not inspiration, not knowledge. Ritual, repetition, rhythm. The man who becomes rich, fulfilled, unshakable is not the man who feels ready, but the man who does the hard things so consistently that they become who he is. You do not become strong by thinking about discipline. You become strong by repeating discipline when you least want to. You do not become calm by reading about detachment. You become calm by choosing principle over feeling 1,000 times a day. You do not become successful by hoping. You become successful by installing rituals that operate with mechanical reliability. The sun rises. You rise. The weak sleep in. You build. The world reacts. You decide. This rhythm is the bridge between desire and destiny. And every time you repeat it, you reinforce the belief that you are the kind of man who follows through. And that belief eventually becomes law. And once it becomes law, success follows you not as an accident, not as a surprise, but as a result you engineered. There is a law greater than gravity, greater than economy, greater than chance. It is the law of identity. And it states, you can never outperform the self-image you refuse to outgrow. You may act like a winner for a day. You may speak like one for a week. You may even trick others into believing you've changed. But until you change your identity, until you declare with finality, this is who I am now, your old self will drag you back by the throat. Because the mind protects what is familiar. And if failure is familiar, it will protect failure. If laziness is familiar, it will justify excuses. If reactivity is familiar, it will fight for drama. But once you install a new identity with discipline, detachment, and design, then you no longer have to force success. You become the kind of man who attracts it by being aligned with it. You must say, I do not respond the way I used to. I do not make choices based on feeling. I choose based on future. I do not ask permission to rise. I declare it. This is not a personality shift. This is a psycho-spiritual rebirth. And it begins the moment you stop waiting for the world to approve of your transformation. Stop explaining. Stop announcing. Start becoming. Because the man who builds in silence builds without interference. You do not need applause. You need alignment. You do not need sympathy. You need standards. You do not need support. You need to burn the bridge that leads back to who you used to be. Let others gossip. Let others scroll. Let others rationalize their stagnation. But you must live like a man on fire. Not emotionally, but deliberately. You must wake with a sense of unbreakable war cry in your blood that says, I will train my emotions like a warrior trains his blade. I will act in peace as fiercely as others act in anger. I will hold the line when others beg for comfort. And if you do this, if you stay true to this daily, if you protect this frequency like it is your last breath, then success will not be a fantasy. It will be a mathematical certainty. Because when your inner world becomes a fortress, when your thoughts march in alignment with your standards, when your actions reflect your deepest intention, life surrenders. Circumstances begin to obey you. Opportunities begin to find you. Distractions begin to avoid you. And the man who once doubted now dominates not by accident, but by design. Reprogram your mind before it's too late. Before the noise gets louder. Before the years pass faster. before your potential is buried under comfort, chaos, and compromise. Because your mind is the master switch to everything you want. And if you do not flip that switch, no amount of books, routines, or goals will save you. You have the power. You have the right. And now you have the truth. So rise. Not tomorrow. Not when it's easier. Now. Because now is all you've ever had, and the man who masters now owns everything that comes next.